William Henry Harrison was the ninth president of the United States and was also the first president to be a Whig Party member. He is the president who has the shortest term, the first president to die in office, and the only president to die in office of natural causes. William Henry Harrison was born on February 9th, 1773. His father, Benjamin Harrison V, owned a large plantation in Virginia which resided several miles from Yorktown. Harrison's father was also a founding father and fifth governor of Virginia, and Benjamin Franklin and George Washington would often stay at the plantation for weeks at a time. Harrison, the youngest of 10 children, showed an early interest in medicine, and his father enrolled him in medical school. Harrison questioned his choice of schooling, and when his father died in 1791, Harrison left to see him and never went back. Later that year, Harrison joined the U.S. Army at 18. Harrison showed promise as a soldier as he was a courageous, promising leader. Harrison was soon promoted to lieutenant. As a lieutenant, he learned how to successfully command a U.S. Army, and he also helped win the Battle of Fallen Timbers in 1794. While stationed in the Ohio River region, he was promoted to captain and married his wife Anna in 1795. After, he maintained control of the military in the Ohio River region. He resigned from the Army in 1798 to run for the Northwest Territories delegate to Congress. Harrison also served as the Northwest Territories delegate to Congress from 1799 to 1800. Harrison had obtained many connections to Eastern aristocracy from his family's plantation and successful military career. They recommended he run, and in 1798 he won the seat. As a delegate for a territory and not a state, his powers were more limited than the other states' delegates. He could not vote on bills, but he could debate them and submit legislature. As a delegate of the Northwest Territory, he was on a committee for the Land Act of 1800, which allowed for smaller, cheaper tracts to be purchased. Prior to 1800, most lands were bought by large companies or the wealthy, and could only be bought in much larger proportions. The Land Act allowed for average people to buy land in smaller doses, promoting expansion in the Northwest Territory. His well-orchestrated representation of the Northwest Territory led to him being appointed the governor of the Northwest Territory by President John Adams. He resigned from his position as a delegate and went back to the territory in late 1800 to begin his term as governor. As governor of the Northwest Territory, Harrison pushed for the territory to gain statehood and for the territory to have legal slavery for 10 years, allowing the territory quicker statehood because the slaves would allow faster growth. These slavery laws were at the time controversial and were eventually repealed in 1808. The territory was also expanded in 1803, including pieces of the recently purchased Louisiana Territory. During his term, Harrison purchased and negotiated land from the Native Americans. This included buying a large 2.5 million acre plot from the Miami tribe in 1809, and the Treaty of St. Louis forced the Sauk and Meskwaki tribes to give land to the federal government. In 1809, the western side of the Northwest Territory separated to form the Illinois Territory, leaving the eastern half to become the Indiana Territory. Harrison resigned from his position as governor of the Indiana Territory in 1812, where he retired to a small farm at 39. By the time the War of 1812 started, Harrison was almost 40 and he had not seen military action in almost 15 years. He had shown great courage during the Battle of Fallen Timbers and performed well as the governor of the Indiana Territory, so he was appointed with controlling the military in the Northwest. As a commander, he relieved Detroit of British occupation and fought the British in Canada. By the war's ending in 1815, Harrison had been promoted to general and was praised nationwide. After that, he served a brief, uneventful term in the U.S. House of Representatives in 1824. Harrison retired and ran several unsuccessful businesses, including a horse breeding business. In 1836, Harrison decided to run against Martin Van Buren for the presidency. His campaign portrayed him as an average farmer who had lived on the frontier and who could represent the average American. He was chosen by the Whig Party to represent them in the election. His political views were mostly unbiased, and he provided no political opinion during his campaign. He was well known after his successful military career, including the Battle of Fallen Timbers and his role during the War of 1812. He mostly used simple rhymes and melodies to attract the typical voter. His log cabin campaign was somewhat successful, but he lost to Van Buren. Harrison, convinced he could win in 1840, ran again and won. Harrison's inauguration speech on Thursday, March 4th, 1841, was a prominent one, as was the first inauguration speech to be sent by train nationwide, allowing many to read it the day it was spoken aloud. Harrison's inauguration was infamously cold and wet, but Harrison insisted he stay outdoors. He delivered the longest speech on record, a ridiculous 8,500 words. The cold weather, long speech, and Harrison's old age, 68, all contributed to his unfortunate contraction of pneumonia, which would lead to his death on April 4th, 1841, having only served 1 month in office. The then current Vice President John Tyler then resumed the presidency and remained until the term's end in 1845.
Tyler deemed his Excellency was sworn in as the president on April 6, 1841, just 2 days after the death of his predecessor, William Henry Harrison. He was tasked with the charter of the U.S. National Bank. Tyler went against his new party on this issue by vetoing the charter. Congressional Whigs and their party leaders formally denounced John Tyler from the party, and the president was now without a party. Due to this, all but one cabinet members resigned from his administration in light of the charter bill not passing. Tyler hated being in office as he felt lonely. He described it as dilapidating and dirty. In a letter to his wife, Tyler wrote about how hard it was to escape the pressure of the presidency for minutes alone. His only happiness in the day came with the half hour of time he spent with his kids. Although he was almost impeached in 1843 by the Whigs, Tyler helped with the reorganization of the Navy, the founding of the National Weather Bureau, and brought an end to the Second Seminole War. More notably, Tyler brought the Rhode Island Rebellion led by Thomas Dorr to an end. After a short bid for the 1844 election, in which he withdrew due to lack of support, Tyler ended his presidential term on a good note. On his last day in office, Tyler signed a bill making Florida the 27th state of the United States. John Tyler, 10th President of the United States and 23rd Governor of the state of Virginia, was born on March 10th, 1790 in the town of Greenway, Virginia. John was the son of a wealthy planter and former Virginia governor, where he grew up on a plantation his whole childhood. He went on to attend and graduate William and Mary, in which he studied law. At age 21, Tyler was elected to the Virginia legislature in 1811, which marked the beginning of a very long and illustrious political career. In 1817, after 6 years of working in the legislature, John Tyler was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, where he served 2 terms as a congressman. He then returned back to his home state, where he went back to the state legislature for 1 term. After a short 2-year bid as a state congressman, Tyler decided it was time to run for governor, and in 1823 was elected to be the 23rd governor of Virginia, a seat held by powerful leaders such as Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, and even his dad. One of the most notable aspects of his gubernatorial bid was his somewhat powerful eulogy of the late Thomas Jefferson. Like most of his political positions, Tyler's time was once again cut short when the man was elected to the U.S. Senate in 1827, where he faithfully served his great state for 9 years until 1836. As a senator, Tyler grew tired of the tyrannic policies of the president at the time, Andrew Jackson. President Jackson helped with the removal of the Cherokee tribe, vetoing the Bank of the United States, while also removing every government fund from that bank, helping to bankrupt the bank. Tyler had grown up as a Democratic Republican, but after seeing the effects of President Jackson, he resigned from the Senate before the whole Virginia vote of censure debacle. The Senate had created a bill to resolve the erratic decisions by Jackson. The Virginia legislature wanted Tyler to vote one way, and Tyler was not wanting to be told what to do by the legislature, so he resigned from the Senate and became affiliated with the Whig Party, a party formed in the opposition of Andrew Jackson. As Tyler gained lots of support in the Whig Party, Martin Van Buren was creating a financial mess caused by his good old pal, Andrew Jackson. Tyler was nominated as William Henry Harrison's running mate to help attract Southern voters, and with the help of a good campaign slogan that originated from Harrison's hometown, Tip and Co. and Tyler too, the duo won the election by a landslide in the Electoral College, 230 votes to 60. Harrison wasn't the smartest of most, and on his inauguration day, he chose not to wear a hat and coat as he delivered his inaugural address in the bitter cold. He was diagnosed with pneumonia and died a month later. This left the country in a state of shock, but in an even bigger constitutional crisis. The Founding Fathers had never classified what would happen with the death of a president. Tyler decided it was his responsibility, and he took over as president. The official order of the presidency was not established until 1947. Tyler had married his first wife, Letitia Christian, at age 23, in which they had 8 children. Tyler suffered a tragedy in office when his wife died in 1842. Howe was engaged just 2 years later with Julia Gardner, in which they had 7 children with. Tyler had owned slaves his whole life, and in office was accused of having kids with one of them. There has ever been no proof found, and many still speculate to this day. Directly following his departure from office, Tyler moved to his 1,200-acre plantation on the James River in Virginia. There he helped raise his second family with his wife, Julia Gardner, which they had 7 kids together, his 15th in total. In 1861, with the Civil War on the brink of starting, Tyler chaired a peace conference in Washington, D.C. in order to preserve the Union. However, the conference was a failure, and the Senate disapproved the conference. Later that year, Tyler voted in favor of seceding from the Union in Virginia. After that, he was elected to serve as a member of the Confederate House of Representatives in the new capital, Richmond, Virginia. However, before becoming a member, Tyler died to a stroke. Interestingly, Tyler wasn't officially recognized in D.C. by the government. Therefore, there was no presidential funeral. He was buried by the Confederates, painted as a hero, and draped in the Confederate flag. He, to this day, is the only president to be buried under a different flag. Fun facts. Tyler had a kid when he was 60. That kid also had a kid when he was 70. That kid is still alive and in his 90s today. Therefore, Tyler has a grandkid still alive. Tyler set a record for the number of cabinet and Supreme Court nominations that were rejected or forced to be withdrawn. He appointed 8 in 2 years, but only 2 were appointed.
Harrison also served as the Northwest Territories delegate to... Sam, you screwed it up! As governor of the Northwest Territory, Harrison pushed for the territory to gain statehood for the territory.
That'll be a blooper.